Ralph here, welcome to Geoterrics Outdoors Australia. In the last few weeks I've spent a few nights up at the old farm, and the temperature has dropped down to -3, almost -4 in the bus, and it's been -6 on the outside, heavy frosts, and trying to keep warm in a small space like a motorhome is a little difficult. Multiple layers of blankets, and you get to keep warm. The big problem is that the condensation from our breath freezes on the inside of the glass, and then as that warms up it actually leaks down into the bus fittings and starts to make them swell, and the possibility of rust. So I bought myself a diesel heater at my eldest brother's place here in northern New South Wales, because he's actually got one on his caravan. So I'm just going down to the workshop, and we'll have a quick look at what came in the box and what didn't come in the box, and some of the solutions we're trying to craft with some spare parts and some other bits and pieces that we can possibly make this thing work, because from here I'm going up to the old farm and expecting some cold nights up there. So, well, let's have a look. I think you'll enjoy this one. All right, so what came in the box was this diesel heater with a air inlet here, and a power cord with a little fuse and a couple of loose ends of wire. On the front there's an air outlet and the main remote. Also got a portable remote. I can operate the diesel heater from inside the bus. It had some hardware. It had a muffler, but it didn't show that on the photo, so I actually bought another one. It had the exhaust hose, the air inlet hose, the heated air inlet, and the various bits of mounting hardware, and that was all okay, plus a couple of legs that I'll show you in a sec, and that you can actually mount this to a board or some other sort of structure. The instructions, well, unfortunately they're becoming fairly typical. We've got here English, German, French, Italian, Spanish, yada yada, and it shows you how the internal structure of the combustion chamber works, where to put it, and various models. And it shows you a installation diagram, which is probably, of all the bits and pieces I've received from these dropship companies, is probably the biggest joke, because this actually doesn't show you anything, because it shows you a whole other model, and then what happens with the instructions is just a whole lot of instructions on how to work the various remotes, different types of remotes, and nothing about how to install this, where to install, some of the safety features of installation, such as air intake and making sure that you don't asphyxiate yourself in your caravan or your van. So this is a bit of a challenge. One of the things it didn't have was, once you get heated air coming through this pipe, is a way to duct it into your caravan or your bus. It's just a hose that's hanging here. So that's been a real problem. Thankfully, my brother has a spare vent and a few other bits and pieces, and we'll get busy in seeing what we can do to make all this work. A couple of fundamental design problems we've got with diesel heaters, particularly this model, is it's freestanding, and the clearance that we've got to get the exhaust pipe out from its vent underneath the unit is going to bring it very, very close to a fairly vulnerable piece of plastic as part of the cowling, which is going to melt it. Now, I actually have done some research on these and watched a few YouTube videos, and one YouTube creator suggested very smartly that you use some exhaust tape, and that's exactly what we've done. We've got some exhaust tape here that we can wrap around so it will heat shield the exhaust pipe from melting the cowling and the whole thing going up in smoke, and possibly your caravan or bus as well. So that's one issue. So what we need to do is raise this and get this up out of the way. So we've got a couple of issues in where do we put the heated air duct coming into the bus. There's really very little scope. There's other issues with getting it up through the floor or one of the other bulkheads, but there's fuel and water tanks all over the place. The option we've actually come up with is to put it in the step here, right in the corner where there's a little bit of a recess there, which is a little bit out of the way, with that duct that we can duct it in here and get the air at least a little bit further back. There's enough clearance for the diesel heater to go underneath here if we wanted to get it out of the weather, but there isn't enough option to get the exhaust pipe and the air inlet hoses under here, I don't think, and we're looking at making a little bit of a riser to get this up, and then unfortunately this won't be able to go underneath to keep it out of the weather. So yeah, we're still looking at various options. We'll see how it all pans out. So what we've done, we've put the heat tape on the exhaust, and we've made a slightly larger hole with a bracket and a clamp just to get it into position here. Fantastic. We've got the air inlet, and it'll all be working quite okay. The beauty of this particular diesel heater is that it's portable, and not only can I attach it here onto the bus, but I can attach it into the hut or other structures in the old farm. So I'm hoping that the hot air rising up into here will then be able to be pushed back to the bed and shower, and actually give us air where we need it. Not quite sure how that's going to work. We will see. As I mentioned earlier, we had some challenges in getting the vent mounted and flush, and how to actually get the hot air into the bus onto here. Luckily my brother had a T-piece left over, and what we're actually going to do is, well, it would have been better if it was an elbow, but we didn't have an elbow, so we've actually jury rigged up this with a little bit of excess hose. We've got one end which is screwed off on both sides, and then another end which I can then attach the hose to, and this vent coming up through the floor, and then direct that, because it's actually directional. But I'll have an end there over here that I can just attach the air inlet hose to, and do up with a little hose clamp that I'll get with wing nuts that'll make it really convenient. So the T-piece lock onto here. Once that clamp has been done up, this will protrude out just that little bit. So afternoon at the old farm, and the diesel heater is filled up, set up, and powered up, and ready to go. Ooh, I can hear whirring. Right, so I actually just pressed the power button and it came on, and I'm just feeling here, and there's so far cold air coming through. What I need to now do is increase the temperature. All right, the plot thickens. There's not enough power in the battery to run the unit. It's telling me low voltage. It's one of the error codes. So not a great start. Really starting to get annoyed actually. All right, so the last one failed. I took it back to the supplier Oz Online shopper in Brisbane, and couldn't have been more helpful. And he's actually organised to get me a replacement because the main board was fried, as well as the little diesel igniter. So I've got a new one here, just about to unpack. So it's basically new out of the box. I'm actually going to use the existing setup that I have here, utilising a little project that my brother and I made down on the coast, and I'm going to get all this set up, and hopefully this one's going to work and we're not going to have ice on the inside of the bus. So this is exciting. Everything's connected, batteries on, and I'm just about to start through the cycle up process. So I've dropped a little bit of diesel in here and connected up to the battery, which is reading at 12.7 volts. That should be plenty. And I'm about to cycle through these instructions. A couple of things are happening that didn't happen last time. First, we've got ignition, and I've got hot exhaust here. Haven't got hot, oh, it's starting to warm up now. So I've set it up here on the veranda, because once bitten, twice shy. There's quite a bit of warmish air coming through here, and it's starting to make some noise. I don't know if you can hear all that. Okay, we've tested everything. It works like a charm. The reason I didn't really want to do this, I wanted to actually put the old unit back on that my eldest brother put on down here, so I wouldn't actually have to grub around on the ground, especially if it's raining or something like that. So, but hey, for tonight, just to get this tested, I'm actually going to grub around on the ground, get all this tight and put on, and just so we can get some heat in here. Right, a couple of things concern me. Is have a look down here, the exhaust being so close to the vent, and unfortunately this is a non-closable vent. I can't actually close this vent, and I'm not sure if diesel fumes are going to go up into the cabin, but I am going to need a longer exhaust so I don't asphyxiate during the night and not be able to bring you good quality videos anymore. Let's give it a go in the meantime and see if it actually pumps up. So with a failing light, you probably can see better in the camera. We turn it on. Starting to pump already. Battery's there. I'll put it up under the bus so it doesn't get affected too much by the cold. Got a warning light there, which is the charge. Let's have a quick look. 12.4. It was down to lower than that before, and actually I noticed that in the startup it uses a bit more electricity. It's gone down to 12.3, but that'll go up to 12.5 as it did earlier. So I'll get this tucked away, clean air intake there, and I'll just quickly get this underneath. Because I've chocked this up, I've actually got room now. When we built this, we were concerned that I wouldn't be able to do that because of the handle. If you can have a look here, Ken, that handle is smack on. I'd need to chock it up a little bit more. That hose is flexible and it's all okay there, and I can bend this around. All right, so an hour's gone past, we've had dinner, and I've come to check the bus to see what the temperature is. Where before the temperature was 15 It's actually about 11 degrees outside, possibly colder, and it's actually climbing in here slowly, but it's working. But I just discovered that I had the driver's side window open, and all this beautiful warm air is just going straight out the window. So I feel like a bit of an idiot, and everyone else here thinks I'm a bit of an idiot. Sonia's on bed, just going, well, it's 16 degrees. I'll have a quick look at the diesel outside and see how much it's taken. The battery's still pumping a lot of air, but I think given that it's probably 5 degrees outside and it's 16 in here, I think we're doing okay. So that is used very, very little. I think that's going to run most of the night. Let's have a quick look and see what the battery's doing. Battery's still at 12.4, 12.5. All right, so the battery's still at 12.4, 12.5. It's going backwards and forwards. So it's really holding well, and it's not using a lot of power. The fumes in there don't smell as bad as they did initially, because I've moved that out of the way. One thing I will do, and I advise you to do as well, get a CO2 and a CO, so a carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide meter, so you can get an alarm if your carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide levels go up. That's about it. Now that the window's closed, I think we're going to be fantastically warm in there tonight. This little thing, all night, still going. Still diesel in the tank. Let's have a quick look at the battery. 12.3 on the battery. Okay, so last night was fantastic in the bus. It's the first night we've had minus temperatures where the condensation didn't freeze on the inside. Outside there was a bit of a frost, not a lot, but hey, it was probably about -1 outside, and in the bus by the end of the night it was still 10 degrees. The unit worked all night, actually until I turned it off. It worked 14 hours and used about 3/4 of a tank of diesel. Admittedly, I'd put that right down to its lowest temperature, which was quite okay. The heat that radiated out was still less than what was going in, so that's a positive thing. It uses very little fuel for how long it's going for and what it's actually doing, and it doesn't use much battery power. So this morning I looked at the battery and it still had 12.3 volts. If you remember yesterday, we started at 12.4, 12.5, and it pumped all night and it was still 12.3, so that's a real plus. It's very efficient.
It didn't keep me awake either, which is good.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Was it noisy?
I could hear it humming, but it was no worse than having a fan ticking.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. Well,
for me.
Well, that's a good thing. It's reasonably quiet. I could hear the air, and that's when I kept waking up. I woke up and checked the temperature at 12, at 2, and at 4, and between 4 and 7 when I finally got up, it went from 15, which it had held all night, the coldest part of the night, and it dropped down to 10. Downside to this is trying to get the remote to work. There's a little setup instructions, but the instructions don't match the remote. It's very confusing trying to get to set up the remote to talk to the unit, and generally the fitting instructions, it's an outside unit, but you still got to plumb somehow. You've got to get air into the space that you're trying to heat. I think the manufacturer needs to really have a look at the instructions. I've got to give it a score out of 5. I'll give it a 3.25 out of 5. That's a very solid pass. So if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends. Please leave a comment if you've got one, if you've done something different, if you've got a different model, if you've got any ideas on how I can get through these instructions. I'd really appreciate anyone dropping me a comment or a bit of a hand. But most important, thanks for watching.